All right, everyone. I am back on YouTube. I was actually planning on not returning to YouTube and just stick with BitChute, but I decided to return because I am not a quitter. And so I'm back on YouTube. It's been the first time doing a YouTube video in months, but here I am. And I am here to bash the fash. That is my channel name, Bash the Fash. And the reason why I picked that name, it's not because I'm a communist or a Marxist or anything like that. No. Far from it. Because the fascists, they are socialists, they're Marxists, and ideologically, they're actually quite close to communism as far as Marxism and socialism goes. They both have very similar and paralleled ideological roots. I picked the term bash the fash because that is what I am here to do. I am here to bash fascism and really any sort of despotic ideology, be it in a atheistic face or be it under the guise of Christianity. And that does exist, believe me. There's a lot of that going on, especially now. I mean, it's always been here, but lately I noticed there's a lot of these Catholic types promoting fascism, or they have sympathies towards Nazism, or they are trad Catholics and they won't say that they're Nazis, but they'll say that they were waiting for a great leader who was going to, take over Europe and usher in, I don't know, the revival of the Roman Empire or something like that. So I am here to bash the fash. I also use the term to troll the right wing, which I find hilarious. I used to consider myself, conservative and this, and I had, I liked the right wing and I had sympathy for the quote-unquote right wing, but then I actually began to read Catholic literature. I began to read true Christian literature, like, for example, Vladimir Solovyov, who wrote a book called The Russian Ideal, which was against nationalism. Great book. I read Hilaire Belloc, who talked a lot about the dangers of a supremacist of a government in which profit and industrialism reigns supreme. Reading these books really changed. My principles haven't changed, but it helped me realize things that I wasn't realizing. Of course, reading the Church Fathers has helped me greatly because when you read the Church Fathers, you understand the balance that Christianity contains. The balance between justice and mercy, the balance between making profit and helping your neighbor, all of these things. And so I believe in intellectual evolution. I believe that we evolve intellectually and we don't really change our principles. I mean, speaking for myself here, I haven't changed my principles, but I think I surely have, I've surely seen things I wasn't seeing before. And what I wasn't seeing was a lot of the dangerous aspects of the right wing. Now, I did see some of it, but I didn't see it in its totality. And I'm still learning. But I've realized this reality, and I'm learning about this reality. So I want to get into the subject of the 5 different types of Nazis that you will come across when you are researching the right wing, when you're researching Nazi ideology, all that stuff. So from my own observation and from my own experience, researching things, reading about this subject, being involved in activism and all that, I have noticed that there are 5 different types of Nazis. So the first one is, this is my list. It's not necessarily going to be in this order, but this is just a list that I came up with. The first one on the list, on my list, is the economic Nazi. This is the person who says that he wants socialism for his people, for his race. And he won't necessarily say that his race is superior to others. He will simply say, things like, I am not a racist. I don't believe that my race is superior to other people. But I simply want a welfare state for my people and for my race. I want to see a socialist state for my people. Again, he won't say that he is a racist. He won't say that he is superior to others, but he believes that. And he'll say, I'm not a racist, but he really is. And so that's really the essence of what National Socialism is. It's national, the nation, the people, the blood lineage, the ethnic group, and there's socialism for the ethnic group. So they don't mind Marxism as long as it's for their people. The second type of Nazi on the list is this Nazi is more on the atheistic side. He is more of an atheistic persuasion. And this person is the one who says that his race is superior to other people, or that his race is inherently better than the other races in certain aspects. So he'll say, his race is more intelligent, or his race is stronger, his race is more warlike than other people's. And this is the more Darwinistic Nazi, right? This is the one who believes in Darwinism. And he won't necessarily say that he believes in God. A lot of these people will say that they are just pure atheists. And, they take Charles Darwin's theory and they apply it to everything. They apply it to politics, they apply it to war, they apply it to social policy, they apply it to economic policy, all that stuff. Herbert Spencer was you could say he was one of the major patriarchs of this ideology, one of the major pioneers of this ideology. He believed that government charity was evil, that for the government to help certain people was evil, for the government to help those who were poor or those who were physically handicapped or mentally handicapped. He believed that these things were bad because it was allowing the weak to survive and perpetuate their genes, potentially perpetuate their genes. And so it would lead to a degeneration of the people, the folk, and all that stuff, survival of the fittest and all that. So that's the second type. And then you have the third one, and this is a Nazi who is more on the religious side of things. But he won't say that he believes in Christianity. He will say that he believes in reviving the ancient religions of Europe, or the Indo-European gods of the white race. He'll say we need to worship Odin and Thor and Freya and the elves and the warlocks and the trolls and all that nonsense. And he won't necessarily say that he believes in Darwinism. He won't necessarily say that he believes in racial superiority. He will simply say, I want to worship the gods of our people, which is actually, if you think about it, it's pretty retarded, because when you say the gods of our people, how do you know that those actually were the gods of your people? I mean, did your people originate those gods? How do you know that these gods didn't originate somewhere in Iran, or maybe somewhere in the Caucasus Mountains? I don't know. They try to make every religion regional, but it's not necessarily the case every time. I mean, if you look at the gods of not all of them, but if you look at some of the gods of the Hindu pantheon, a number of them actually originate from Iran. So, religion is not necessarily regional. If you read, it's interesting, if you read some of the ancient Scandinavian literature, it describes Odin as a man who came from the Caucasus Mountains. So I wonder what gods Odin worshipped, right? If he was an historical figure, and I believe that he most likely was, like Hercules and a lot of these other pagan gods. These were very, very famous people who were deified. But it makes you wonder, what gods did Odin worship? What gods did, a lot of these pagan figures worship? So that's one type of Nazi, right? And then you have the one who was really all of the above. These people will say that they are Darwinists, they are pagans, and they believe in National Socialism. And these people will openly hate Christianity. But then you have the fifth person on the list. And this is the type of Nazi who is more deceptive. He's much more deceptive because he won't come out and say that he is a pagan. He won't come out and say that he's a National Socialist. In fact, he will say that he hates socialism. He won't necessarily come out and say that he's a eugenist or that he believes that his race is superior to others. This particular person will say that he is a Christian. He will either say that he is a Catholic or some sort of a Lutheran, some sort of a, he'll say, I'm a traditional Lutheran or something like that. He'll less likely say that he is an evangelical. But he'll say that he is a Christian of some sort of traditional persuasion. And he will say that he could come out and say that he's a trad Catholic. And that he wants to not see Nazism come back. He doesn't want to see a racialist government rise up. But he will say, I am a Catholic or Christian monarchist, and I believe in reviving the Holy Roman Empire. And so you could look at that person and say, well, he's not a Nazi, he's just a monarchist. Now, there's nothing wrong with monarchy, right? Monarchy unto itself is innocent. It's not inherently evil, just as having a Congress or a Senate is not inherently evil. The form of government doesn't really matter. What matters is the ideology that underlies that government, or that surrounds that government, or that represents that government. You could have a Congress full of very righteous politicians, and you could have a decent society, or you could have a Congress full of very, very evil politicians. You could have a monarchy that has a very good king, or you could have a monarchy that is very, very evil, the very evil king. Look at people like, I don't know, Vlad the Impaler, Mehmet II, the Japanese emperors. So this person says that he's a monarchist and he respects all monarchy, and he wants to see in Europe and in the Western world the revival of the Roman Empire. Now, I've noticed lately that there are a lot of people on the internet who now declare themselves to be monarchists. They say, I'm a monarchist, and they'll, hashtag monarchy, and, bring back the Habsburgs or something like that. Here's the problem with this ideology. Like I said, there's nothing wrong with monarchy, but there is definitely something wrong with monarchists. They say that they want to bring back the empire, right? The Roman Empire. Now, what would that entail in a modern context? We are no longer living in the days where people are generally Christian. Today, people are generally, especially if you go to Western Europe, people are generally atheistic, or they believe in God, but at the same time, they'll believe in Darwinism. Darwinism, in fact, is so entrenched in Europe, in the Western world in general, in the world in general, in fact. I mean, you can go to Latin America, and people believe in evolution. You can go all throughout Asia, Eastern Europe, people believe in evolution. It's very, very common. And it's actually quite rare nowadays to meet someone who doesn't believe in evolution, especially people in my generation. But in the Western world, and in the world in general, people believe in evolution. It's extremely entrenched in today's society, modern society. So if you were to bring back the empire, you would not be able to remove Darwinism. You would not be able to remove evolutionism, right? You wouldn't be able to purge all of society of people who believe in evolutionism. It's impossible. You're going to have people who believe in evolution. You can't just get rid of them. And so what would happen if the monarchists get their fantasy, right? What's going to happen if the monarchist fantasy becomes a reality? What you will have is a compromise between the trads and the Darwinists. You'll have a compromise between the trads, by trad I mean traditionalists, the traditionalists, and the people who are anti-clerical, people who hate the church. You will have a compromise between people who believe in God and who don't, who believe in atheism or believe in paganism. And so what kind of an empire are you going to have? This is the type of questions that I've never seen monarchists really answer. What type of a monarchy, what type of an empire are you going to end up having? You're going to end up with an empire that's full of Darwinists. And you're going to have a bunch of Christians who are hypocrites, and they are going to betray their own faith for just a moment of power. That's what happened in the Third Reich. You had Catholics who said that they loved Hitler because they thought he was going to defeat communism and he's going to bring back some great Christian monarchy. And Hitler did a very good job in deceiving a lot of people because he said that he was a Christian, and he even tried to get close to Mr. Uh, uh, Pope Pius XII before he was Pope Pius XII, and he also tried to get close with the papacy when Pope Pius XII was the Pope. Eugenio Pacelli, that was his name. Before Pope Pius XII, before he was Pope, was Eugenio Pacelli. And he was, Hitler did a very efficient job in deceiving a lot of people. So you can't get rid of the Darwinists. You can't get rid of the evolutionists. They're going to be there. So what kind of an empire are you going to have? You're going to have an empire full of people who say that they're Catholic or Christian, but they believe in despotism, and they believe in just really a diabolical, oppressive system. You're going to have the eugenist, you're going to have pagans, and you're going to have national socialists. And you're going to have people who are all of the above. So if the monarchists get their way, they're going to get all the other Nazis in line. They're going to get all the other Nazis involved in their little system. And the monarchists will simply be just another cog in the machine, just another tool. And that's what monarchists usually are. They're really just tools. I've met people who are monarchists, and I've seen a lot of them on the internet. These people are really foolish ideologues, and they're tools. They think that, we're going to have a monarchy, and it's going to be Catholic and Christian, and they've had either no one really challenge them with questions like these, or they are completely oblivious to reality, or they are historically inept, or really they're all of the above. And that's the case that I see with most of them. They're all of the above. They're historically inept. They've never been challenged, and they are vacuous of any sort of awareness as to what's happening. Some of them are just plain evil. So if you get the monarchist, who is the one who's Christian, right? If you get the fifth type of Nazi who is Catholic and Christian and this and that, and he says he's not a socialist, and he says he's not a Nazi, he hates Nazism, but he just wants to see the revival of the Roman Empire. What are you going to get? You're going to get all the other Nazis in power. And it's the same thing, vice versa. If the National Socialist who hates the church gets power, he will have compromises with people who claim Catholicism. It really is that simple. If you look at the history of the Reichs, right? You had the First Reich, which supposedly begins with, this is what they say. It begins with Charlemagne, and then it ends when Napoleon invades Prussia. That's the end of the First Reich. And then you have the Second Reich, which begins with Otto von Bismarck in the 1870s. And then that ends with World War I. Now, what happened after World War I? The Americans did essentially the same thing that they did in Iraq. They enforced democracy in Germany. And they got rid of the Kaiser, which pissed off a lot of people. And they say, okay, Germany is going to have democracy. Well, what eventually happened? The Germans simply voted themselves another dictator. They voted themselves another monarch. And Hitler believed that his Reich was the revival of the Roman Empire. Now, of course, it wasn't the revival of the Roman Empire. It was simply the revival of what the Germans aped from the Romans. But that's what they believed. They believed that it was the revival of the Roman Empire. And so the Americans said, we're going to have democracy. And a lot of the German people said, no, we want a king again. We want an empire. And the monarchists are no different. They say, we want a king, we want an empire. Well, what are you going to vote in? What are you going to vote for? Most people aren't Catholic like you, right? Most people believe in Darwinism and evolution. A lot of people are pagans. So what kind of empire are you going to end up with? That's the problem with idealism. The problem with a lot of idealism is that it doesn't factor in all of the other negative aspects of society. It just says, we're going to do this. We're going to establish this. But then they realize they can't do it without making compromises with the people who are the majority, the people who have a lot of influence, the people who have a lot of power, the wealthy, the industrialists, the capitalists. All that stuff has to get factored in. All that stuff plays a role on who is in power, who gets the power. And so Yeah, that's the reason why a lot of monarchists actually backed Hitler. They believed that he was going to be their monarch. And today you have trads who want to see their monarch. And they're just like the people who rejected Christ and they followed Barjoba. Or the people who said, we have no king but Caesar, and they ended up being killed by the very leader they praised. Be careful what you wish for. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. God bless.